Hey everybody, so in this video what we're going to talk about are Wwise events and how they work with an engine like Unity. So I have a basic Wwise project here, and the project is made up of 3 states. Each state is built of a playlist that has 3 or more loops inside of each playlist, and the playlist is set up right now so that it randomly picks one of the different phrases when it's playing. A few other things that I have in this switch container, and the switch container basically has 3 states: chase, explore, and fight. And state 1 is my explore. Forgot to drag these in earlier, so I'll do that now. State 2 is for the chase, and state 3 is set up for the fight. Lastly, I have an intro and outro, and I do that in my transitions. And you can see when I go from none into state 1, which is my explore state, I use a transition segment loop intro to get me there. Secondly, when I go from state 3, which is the last state, to none, then I play the loop end. One other thing is all the rest of the transitions from state 1 to state 2, state 2 to 3, or from state 3 back to state 1 is set up so that will play all the way to the end of the phrase before it plays the new cue. And the destination is set to play the beginning, the entry cue. I also have some stingers here, which I haven't set up yet, but I'm going to do that now. Go to the stingers tab, and what I want to do is add some generic stingers, and I'll go ahead and set up, I've already created triggers in the game syncs tab, which I'll review in a second. So I'm going to go through here and just add in, I have a bunch of basic stingers. These are the triggers for each one of my stingers that I have, and then I'll add one more for the 7th one. And then each one of these plays a different stinger that I have. So I'm just going to correspond each trigger with a different stinger. And then I'll show you all the game syncs that I have for this project. Two more, 6, and then 7. So my game syncs that I have, these are the way that Unity is going to communicate with Wwise. So I have basically one state called the player state, which goes between 3 different individual states within that. So the state group is player state. And I have chase, explore, and fight. We begin with explore, go to chase, and then fight. That's kind of how this game is set up. Then I have all these triggers that I created, and these triggers basically relate back to my switch container and my stingers within my switch. They play immediately as I'm when I trigger them. So in this case, what I can do is let me start out with none down here. I'm playing my music switch container so you can hear it. And what we'll hear first is the introduction. So I go from none into explore. It will play that introduction. So that's the introduction. Then we'll go into state 1, the state 1 playlist. And there are 4 different phrases in here. What it's going to do is it's going to randomly pick between these 4 different phrases. Okay, and then when I go from explore to chase, it's going to wait till the end of the phrase and go into chase. Which is pretty quick there. Similarly, when I go from the chase state into the fight state, it's going to wait until the end of the phrase. So I'll do that right after the next one begins. So this is still chase, and I go into fight. It's going to wait to the end of this phrase and then go into my next sequence. Alright, so now we're in fight, which is state 3. Again, set up as a random playlist. And lastly, I'm going to go to none and wait till the end of the phrase, play the outro into the end. Now, it's still playing, so I can fire some of these stingers that I have. So I'll just go to the trigger menu here, play them. And that's all working. So let's talk about events. An event is one or more actions within Wwise that Unity or another game middleware solution can fire. So when I go to the Events tab, I can see that I have a default work unit. I'll go ahead and create a new child. These are all the different types of events that I can have. So let's create a new event, and right now I'm going to leave it empty, and I'll call it Start Game. And at the start of the game, I want to do a couple different things. One of the things I want to do is set the initial state that I want to be in. So I can go in here, right click on, or actually I'm regular clicking on the greater than signs, and I can go down here and say state, set state. And so when I first start my game, I can actually set up the state that I'm going to be in. So the state that I'm going to be in when I first start, my player state, and I'm going to set it to none. Okay? So I'm not going to hear music right away when I play this because we're set to this. In fact, when I set the state, it's actually not going to do anything yet because I haven't played the switch yet. So after I set the state to what I want it to be, then what I want to do is make have a play object play my switch. And in that, I can browse for my switch in the interactive music hierarchy. So that's my music switch container. And so this event, my start game event, sets the state, then basically begins that switch. Now, if you remember before when I did this, the state going to none is not going to play anything, and so I actually need another event here. So that's what I'll do next is start game. I'm going to start playing stuff, but in essence, I'm playing the switch container with no state applied, which means that's going to be nothing. So then what I want to do is create another child component or another event, which is basically set my state. And so set state, and I'm going to say set state to explore. So I have set state explore. When I click on it, you can see that I have the object here. Then make sure that you select the right state group and the right state within the group itself. So all this event does is sets the state to explore. We're going to do the same thing for the other two states. So I'll go in here, set another set state. And this one will be set state, we'll call this chase. Go ahead again, it's already sort of pre-set up. I just have to select the group and the state that I'm going into next, so that's chase. I'll do two more, at least within the way the music is playing out. So I'll do state, set state, and we'll do set state fight. And when I click on it, I want to make sure that I'm setting the player state to fight. And then the last state that I want to set through an event is called none. So I'll basically go set state. So set state none. So I basically can turn off the music track at some point from within the game. So set state, we'll make sure it's the player state, and we'll actually select it to none. All right. Now, what else do I need to do? Well, I have those triggers, so why don't I create a few events that call those triggers. So I'll go ahead, new child, and you can see down here, you can select trigger. And so I will set this up to trigger 1, and trigger 1 will actually trigger from the triggers list, trigger 1. So this event trigger is firing the trigger from the game syncs. I could name these a little differently, so maybe it's less. So maybe I call this one trigger event 1 because it's an event. And what I'll do is create a bunch more of those. So just go in here and then trigger event 2. When I click on it, I get information about it. I have to use the browse from the Project Explorer to browse to trigger 2, and then it will play it. Now, a few things about trigger events that are a little different. So you can see over here when I select trigger event 1, I have the scope of it. Scope has to do with where it's placed in the game. And for now, let's change all these to global. So the scope for the triggers is set to global. That means that will kind of play wherever it is in the game, whether it's applied to this object or a different object. Go ahead and set up the rest of your project like this, because these are the, again, Unity, when Wwise is brought into Unity in that sound bank that we're going to build in a future tutorial, when we bring all that data into Unity, we can actually call these from the game itself. So from the game it will say, from code or from the inspector window, we'll be able to say start game or set state to explore, and we'll be able to set those up on objects within the world itself. So in the next video, we're going to explore sound banks and the sound caster window. And this basically is getting us one more step to getting the Wwise session that we currently have up into the game itself. So see you on the other side.